Hi, my name is Marco and I'm a CEO at Jatheon Technologies.
My name is Jeff Marlowe. I'm Vice President of Business Development at Jatheon Technologies.
Jatheon is an information archiving company that specializes in archiving both email and unstructured data like social media, voice and text, and instant messaging. And it's been in business for about 15 years and is a leader in search and discovery.
Well, in our world today, we predominantly focus on four markets that are regulated, and those are the ones that have sort of launched this industry. Over time, those markets could expand. There could be additional markets as we go forward, but right now we're very niche. We're very niche, so there's a limited marketplace in terms of what's regulated. But the good news is that it's required. Our technology is required in all those markets, so that demand is always there.
Archiving started back in 2004 after the fall of Enron with introduction of a number of different litigation laws, and this really created the industry. The trends right now is even more regulation, even in countries other than the United States. In Europe, in California, there's even more regulation nowadays. So those laws tend to create the need for archiving as one of the things that the companies need to do to fulfill some of the requirements. Social media archiving is a recent trend that started in financial industry to begin with, and this is sort of spreading across all of the education and various other verticals. Social media is a much more difficult problem than email archiving or phone or voicemail archiving, and it requires very specific technology to address it that is just emerging. We're at the very beginning of the social media archiving trends, and this will just develop over the next few years.
I would add to that along with the lines of what Marco just said, some of the trends have sort of branched out from where we started. For example, in recent times, there is legislation that was passed in Europe, GDPR, that is requiring secure personal data among companies that deal with personal consumer data. And that type of legislation has translated to the types of legislation that we're now seeing in the United States. So we feel that there's an opportunity there too in terms of expanding our own product line, our own technology to accommodate that type of legislation that's forthcoming. I would say we have developed several generations of product that have given us, I think, a leading edge in terms of our core product, which has been email archiving all along. We have evolved that into other forms of information archiving like social media, as Marco mentioned, as well as text archiving. But our product is it's rock solid in terms of the technology. The company has been very technologically focused over the years since its inception. So, and one of the things that set us apart from the competition is our search function. When you look at this type of technology, e-discovery is probably the largest use case. And for e-discovery to work really well, you need to have a very, very comprehensive, very advanced search function, and that's exactly what we have. And we believe it's the most advanced and the most comprehensive of any search function in the industry. So I would say that perhaps more than anything else is what sets the email function apart from anything else.
The biggest challenge is the entry of some of the very large players into the industry, and that technically commoditize the market. With the introduction of Microsoft Office 365 and Google Vault, this industry is basically compressing margin to the point where archiving tends to be a checkbox in a long list of compliance that any company needs to have, and this tends to present various issues for companies that have significantly better search or storage than the products included in Office or in Google. That translates into a requirement to educate the market a lot more, and really showing that some of the discoveries cost a lot more to fulfill with some of these bundled products.
I would add to that too is that whenever you have the word free associated with any product or service, there's something that's not there that value-added providers do have. Otherwise, we wouldn't be in business, nor would other companies like us be in business. Most of the companies that are in the markets in which we serve know what Google Vault is, and they know what some of the others out there that offer free services, free products entail, and there's a reason why they come to us. There is a value added with what we have to offer versus what the freebies don't necessarily offer.
Well, the first thing is that you might have a product bundled at a lower price, and that's not necessarily the first thing that needs to be considered. One of the first things that needs to be considered is what are the requirements of your archiving and discovery for legal and HR purposes, and those requirements need to be carefully considered and matched against the feature set of various different archiving vendors, so that you have maximum efficiency when it comes to e-discovery, which basically helps prevent paying all kinds of different fines for various different timeline misses, and also assuring that you can provide the full data sets that you need to provide for various different discoveries. So the feature set needs to match the requirements, and then that whole solution needs to be considered as a whole.
Well, the retention period for various companies is pretty much a regulated sort of thing. So FINRA, let's say for financial services, will have a requirement for financial services companies that may be different from healthcare under HIPAA or some of the other regulatory bodies out there. So most organizations don't necessarily have to retain data forever. Some of them do, but it's all based upon what industry they are operating under and what the regulatory bodies are dictating.
I think future archiving is vast. I think that currently we have various different documents archived, and more things or information is considered a document, and therefore we started off with an email, which is a classic business document, and then we went over and crossed into the voicemail and phone as being labeled as a business document. Now we have social media, so all your tweets and Facebook posts are also business documents, and I think that trend will continue. So anything where you contribute to any sort of information source or anywhere where you share data will be considered a document in the future, and therefore need to be retained for various different legal purposes, and that basically expands our field into much more than just email. And I think archiving is one of the keys for legal support in the future.
First of all, research points to the fact that this industry is going to continue to expand over the next decade. Growth will be slow, but it's going to be steady over the next decade. So that's one point. Another would be that, as I mentioned earlier, there will be these other avenues that will be driving archiving needs. And it's regulatory related, like, as I mentioned, GDPR or some of the other U.S. Types of legislation that are forthcoming that are requiring, let's say, archiving of personal data consumer data correctly. These are things that are not necessarily regulated in North America right now, but will be in the near future. So it opens up another avenue of opportunity for us. And quite frankly, it's not just in the vertical markets in which we operate today. It's going to be a little bit more expansive than that because that type of legislation, like GDPR and some of the others that I'm referring to, don't necessarily address just those 4 markets that we operate in. It addresses a much wider swath of businesses. So the opportunity, I think, is going to be a little different, but it's going to be bigger than what we're dealing with today.
We are building Jatheon to be a modular solution so that you can get social media archiving as a standalone product or email archiving as a standalone product, or you can get a bundle across all the different information that you might need to archive. And that's really how we're looking at the market. You might find the best solution for your requirements and your needs, and we hope that Jatheon has a certain part of the archiving chain that is served best by our products.
Yes, I would agree. I would agree with that and add to it that if you look at our evolution, we started out as an email archiving only company, and since then we have added on social media as social media archiving and text archiving, as already mentioned. But there are other potential opportunities that are forthcoming that we might want to get into, and we're always looking at this in the market. We're looking at opportunities with other companies or even building it ourselves. In more recent times, we're venturing into building a standalone, for example, social media archiving product, which to date we don't have. It's offered as a feature or a subset of our existing email program. So these different types of archiving will add to our value. It'll broaden our reach and ultimately make us bigger and better as we go forward.